Oh boy, we're back in the game. I want to show you the difference between my most expensive rack mount interface, the Avid MTRX Studio, and my least expensive, the Focusrite 18i20 3rd generation. I don't have the 4th generation, so this kind of applies to a previous generation, obviously. But first, I want to congratulate Luke on winning our February 2025 giveaway. I meant to do a video a little while back and I didn't. Sorry about that. I'll be doing more of these in the near future. If at-home music production and Dolby Atmos music is your thing, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you end up liking this video, give me a like down below. And if you don't, give me a big thumbs down. All right, let's dive in. It'll make a little more sense later on in this video, but for now, we need to justify that these are two totally different interfaces at two totally different price points. The Focusrite is probably the most recognizable brand out there when it comes to audio interfaces. Bright red, selection of relative affordability, along with more expensive products that have more niche requirements in higher end studios. As of February 2025, the 18i20 runs about $600 new, but can be found between $350, $550 used. It has 8 mic line inputs, 2 of which are high Z inputs, 10 balance line outputs, 2 of which are used for your stereo monitors, 2 independently controlled headphone outputs, built-in talkback capabilities, MIDI and SPDIF in and out, and up to 8 channels of ADAT for both 48 kHz and 96 kHz over light pipe, and a world clock out. Yay. There's not much else to ask for in a great audio interface. One thing that makes this one special over other interfaces is their air mode, which replicates the sound of the Focusrite ISA preamps, which gives you a little bit of a brighter sound to a super clean signal. Now the Avid MTRX Studio. While not as popular, in my opinion, still coming from a very reputable brand, Avid. And while not typically offering the most affordable products, the versatility for the products they have to offer is extremely unmatched compared to some other competitors in the same price range. And it's especially good if you already work in Pro Tools. The Avid MTRX Studio right now at the timing of this video is brand new, $5,000. Yikes. And while less likely to be found used, they can range between $3,500 and $4,500. Here we got 2 mic inputs and 2 line inputs, neither of which can be used simultaneously, 16 line inputs and 16 line outputs via a DB25 cable, 64 channels of DigiLink for you HDX users out there, up to 64 channels of Dante, 16 channels of ADAT at 48K, and up to 8 channels at 96K in and out. You also have 2 line outputs for stereo studio monitors and 2 completely independent headphone monitor outputs on the front. On top of the extremely extensive I/O, you also have speaker calibration capabilities, a slot for an optional Thunderbolt 3 card, world clock inputs and outputs, again, yay. Now first thing I want to mention before anything else is the price. You're going to pay almost 10 times the price of a single 18i20 to get a MTRX Studio. While this interface isn't 100% proprietary, you do get a little more flexibility with Pro Tools HDX using DigiLink I/O. And you do have almost 10 times the I/O in the MTRX than you do the 18i20. Most wouldn't even have the need for that much I/O, so why even bother considering the MTRX Studio in the first place? We got 3 things: external hardware, Pro Tools HDX, and Dolby Atmos. And if you're using all 3 of these, the Avid MTRX Studio is actually a pretty good bargain. Technically, you can use the Focusrite interface for all 3 of these things too, but you will need many more of them to do all 3 simultaneously. And you still won't be able to be as efficient as having a MTRX Studio would be. Let's say you buy $5,000 worth of 18i20s. For the ease of numbers, let's say you bought 8 of them. That now gives you roughly 64 mic line inputs and 60 outputs. That seems like a pretty good deal to me, honestly. Now I only have to have 8 USB ports for my computer to be able to create an aggregate device to run all of that I/O simultaneously in a single project for some DAWs. And I could probably even get away with using 4 USB ports and connecting all of those ins and outs through ADAT. Because even though I have 2 ports, I can only send and receive 8 channels at a time, unlike the MTRX Studio that allows even up to 16 channels at 48K. I mean seriously, only 8 channels total. You have 2 ADAT ports with the potential capability like the MTRX Studio to run 16 channels at 48K. and they still limit it. Maybe it's a hardware issue, I don't know. But the only reason that second port on the 18i20 exists is so you can get an additional 4 channels at 96K. No 48K support, at least beyond 8 channels. That's crazy. It's probably because of some kind of signal routing that they do differently. And to keep things simple, Focusrite left the ADAT cap at 8 channels, no matter if you are running 48K or 96K. That's a bummer. Just something to remember though. In Avid's Matrix Studio control software, it is much more complex and versatile. You want to route ADAT at 96K straight to your headphone output? Do it. You want to send 16 channels over ADAT at 48K over Thunderbolt, Dante, DigiLink, and to another ADAT interface, and to your main outputs plus your headphones? No one is stopping you. The beauty is that if you want to route audio between all of the various inputs and outputs in a very specific way without too much restriction, the Matrix has you covered. But if you do want low latency with a DAW other than Pro Tools HDX, you're gonna have to pay an extra $800 for a Thunderbolt card that's not even built into the interface. Unless you want to use Dante Virtual Sound Card, which isn't low latency, no big deal, but it is a little more complicated to set up. And I do have a video that goes over how to do that. Also consider if you're wanting to send audio over Dante Network, your Matrix Studio will be limited to 64 channels at all sample rates, which to be honest is still a lot. But you won't be able to receive higher channel counts if you're interested in sending and receiving anything more than that. And if you are, you're probably looking to purchase a way more expensive system regardless. Something like the Avid Matrix 2, which has a little more flexibility than even the Matrix Studio. So the Matrix is the clear winner. Why would I not want an 18i20? Well, mic inputs, duh. While the Matrix Studio has all of this fancy I/O, it only has 2 mic preamps. That is if you aren't already using the 2 line inputs on the front. Otherwise, you have nothing.
You get nothing. You lose.
And being able to essentially plug and play your interface can come in really handy if you're working on the go or just need something very simple to record multiple inputs. The Matrix gets a little complicated and requires some setup ahead of time. The control software that comes with the Matrix Studio, called Dadman, is not user-friendly and is a bit complicated when trying to understand what all the different menus do. If you don't have an idea of signal flow and what the interface is actually capable of, the menus can be very confusing. Fortunately for you, I've done the hard work of making a video explaining how to get up and running with a Matrix Studio and Dadman. I'll be sure to leave a link to that video not only in the description, but at the end of this video. So everyone's least favorite topic, what about Atmos? You could technically buy 2 18i20s and use ADAT between the two and have enough outputs for all of your speakers. But then you run the risk of sync issues, controlling the volume of your outputs simultaneously can get tricky, and you have no good way to calibrate your speaker system, whether it be delay or EQ. And to be fair, if you're using the external Dolby Atmos renderer, you have the ability to do speaker calibrations there. But if you're working internally in your DAW with the internal renderer, I don't know, maybe DAWs are doing that now, but as far as I know, they don't. At the timing of this video, there's no way to calibrate it, so I think it defeats the purpose. And if you're like me and really enjoy listening to music in general, if you wanted to have a fully calibrated system, you now have to send information to that external renderer, and I'm not about that. I would much rather have a designated interface that has all of this calibration built in. But that's just me. And in my opinion, it wouldn't be worth the time and investment trying to make it work in the first place. Now, if you're only working in the binaural version, go nuts. It's not gonna make any difference whether you use the Matrix Studio versus the 18i20. You're only using the headphone outputs. They both work perfectly fine for that workflow. Now, I've given my input, no pun intended, and explained some of the caveats that could be a cause for concern. If you're planning on recording a lot of mics and only working in a stereo environment outside of Pro Tools HDX, the 18i20 is a great interface for the price. I would even argue that 2 of them are pretty good, especially being able to send 8 channels of ADAT, having a total of roughly 16 inputs and outputs through a single USB cable. But if you're working in Atmos and not using the binaural renderer alone, the 18i20 is pretty much out of the equation. If you're using Pro Tools HDX, working in an Atmos speaker system, and don't need a designated interface to record more than a few mics at a time, the Matrix is also great. Most people will also be able to afford external preamps, and which having 16 line inputs through a DB25 cable will be super handy to have if you are using external hardware. Let me know what you guys think about these interfaces. What would you use them for? Which one do you prefer? Was there something I missed in this video that you think is important between these interfaces that you think others would probably like to know too? If you're interested in learning more about the Matrix Studio and Dadman, be sure to check out this video along with a bunch of other videos I have about the Matrix on my channel. If you're more interested in learning about more ways that you can work in Dolby Atmos in an affordable manner, check this one out. One way or another, I hope to see you in the next video.